Hello, and welcome to my first proper video. And we are starting off with a bang because I am going to cover today a first round of the World Championship match between, obviously, I'm sure you know it already, you've heard it many times, between Dink, the current world champion, and Gukesh, who is taking the chess world by a storm, especially this year. And seems to be really ready for this match. Well, today's game was a bit shaky for him, but nonetheless, we had, I think, the dream start for the chess world in this World Championship match. I hope you agree. Let me know in the comments what do you think in general. Who are you rooting for? And without further ado, let's jump to the game. Let's jump to the game because it was such an interesting, epic fight. So you already see the result. And you also probably heard the result, but well, what you really want to see is what was happening. Why was it happening? And hopefully, this analysis will be useful for you. Again, especially since it's the first video, let me know in the comments. I will try to be covering every single game of this World Championship match. So let me know what would you like to see in the next recaps. So let's go. We started the game off with e4, so that was not the biggest surprise for sure, but already here we had the biggest surprise. Yeah, we have a French, which is not commonly, seen at the highest events, not at the World Championship matches. I think only, especially in recent years, only few games happened, but there we have it. For Dink, one of his main coaches or seconds, helpers, is Richard Rapport. So he is a specialist of the French defense. And Dink himself mentioned that he was, of course, influenced for this opening. So we have d4, d5, knight c3, knight f6, e5. That's all pretty known stuff. Knight of d7, f4. This is also something that I used to play as white against the French. And c5, knight ce2 is a first rather big, I guess, surprise. Very interesting in this game is also going to be time management, so pay attention to the clocks, which we have by the names of the players. So now after knight ce2, we, this usual move here is knight f3. So the idea is that, okay, the knight is defending the pawn. Here, the idea is also that knight is defending the pawn, just another knight, the one which is already developed. So you might, ask yourself, okay, why is this move played? Well, the idea behind this move is that somewhere along the way, white has, for example, moved c3. So that could be really useful. And now we have knight c6 played by Ding. That is still rather quick answer. c3 immediately. So that confirms the idea of knight c2 e2. But now look at the clock. a5 played. And that is played after such a long thought, almost half an hour thinking. And yeah, it was very interesting. One of the critical points in the game. So also Dink himself mentioned after the game that this was a moment where he was trying to figure out, he really didn't remember exactly the prep. And he was also trying to figure out whether to play something that he has seen before, but he's not feeling that confident in it, or should he just go for something that he simply feels more. And he did go for a5, which I think was such a brilliant idea. As you are gonna see how the game progressed, it paid off, and the whole plan connected with pushing the a pawn just gave black an extremely good game. So knight f3 and immediately a4. I think this is such a cool way to play. Black grabs some space and pushes the pawn, and usually we have a lot of space for our pieces behind the pawn. So now, for example, queen on a5 is gonna feel much more safe. The rook is immediately joining the game this way as well. And you'll see in a moment more ideas behind this push. White is going for super logical development, bishop e3, bishop e7, sure. And now, very exciting move again, g4. That was probably the prep. We see the time management from Gukesh, it's 2 hours. at the start of the game, so he barely used any time, playing really quickly, really confidently at this point as well. Queen a5, another quite a long thought if you see the clock, almost 15 minutes. But I actually really, really like it, what's happening here for black, like kind of very tricky French play. Bishop g2, and now a3. And I think this is also really nice. Now, white has this really strong pawn chain. And what do we usually want to do when there is a pawn chain in the position? We want to attack the base of this chain. So this is the b2 pawn. So this is why a3 is really good. Now after b pawn is gonna move to b3, this is what happened in the game. Now this is really the base of the pawn chain, but c3 pawn is not so strong or well defended. So the whole chain is getting a little bit more shaky. We're also getting some control of the dark squares, obviously. And you'll see that, funny enough, the b2 square is gonna be very important later on in the game. So this was also one of the important moments, especially when we see how it progressed. Now, Ding takes on c4, on d4. Now, push, queen has to retreat, knight takes on d4, and knight to b6. Yeah, this is all pretty logical. I guess there are other continuations. We are not going to be analyzing it like super deeply. But yeah, here, this is very logical because he is going for those squares that are a little bit weak also after b4. So in this game, one of the important things is looking for different squares for our pieces. Also, white could be trying to do it, and we'll see it also a little bit later, how actually white could use the c5 square. So when you look at the position, you should always look at the pawns. Pawns are kind of like a map of the position. And then you see, you know, some cool squares. The squares that our pawns attack, opponent's pawns don't defend or even cannot defend. So here we have some squares for the black. This is the square that the white pawn is nicely guarding. Maybe this square. And yeah, those pieces could be trying to use those squares as either nice outposts or some kind of jumping squares. I sometimes call it like a parkour, you know, so you can like go there but then jump further, so you can use them this way for some safe way to activate your pieces. Now after knight b6, castles was played. Very logical again. I really like it. It's only move 15. We have castles for white. There is g4 already played, like very crazy game. Is the king safe here? Well, for now it is of course safe. There is nothing happening here on the king side for them, like that black could develop some initiative, so it's all very safe for this king for sure. Knight c4, bishop f2 play, and bishop d7. So again, we could be asking ourselves, why on earth is Ding not hustling? Why is he, you know, not finishing development like we are supposed to? But here the thing is that white has some activity, you know, this g4 and f4 was pushed, and there are different ideas connected with f5 especially, sometimes probably g5 as well, maybe even in this position g5. Then one of the ways for black to activate in French in general, but in such structures can also happen in different openings, even in Sicilian, when we just look at those pawns. When black pushes d5 and white is going to answer with e5. So yeah, just f6 attacking the central pawn, opening maybe the f file, and getting space for the pieces in general. So sometimes white can just prevent it with g5. And then the king on g8 actually is not that impossible for white to target as well. So for now, we see that Ding is actually delaying castling, not to give white an easy plan. And I think this is a very cool, very practical approach. And the thing is that he can castle, you know? For now, white is not able to suddenly open up the center and get this king on e8. So he can castle, but he's going to choose a correct time to do so. So that was one of the very, I think, practical and strong things that he did that probably allowed him to win this game, or at least to get this game on some track that is more comfortable for him. So this was a very important moment. Look at the time. It's only 36 minutes for Ding, 1 hour 21 for Gukesh. But what is happening after bishop d7? It could seem that Gukesh has everything. Great position, like space, control of the center, he castled, Ding doesn't castle, maybe Ding is afraid to castle, so perfect, right? But he is now thinking and he is struggling to find a good plan. So there are a bunch of moves here that were possible for white. 92 was mentioned by Dania Naroditsky during the broadcast and also like after already when it was clear what has happened in the game. Maybe it was good to exchange this knight on c4. We see later, we'll see that this knight on c4 was really important. It kind of almost won the game in a simple way. So it was a really important piece, and maybe it was worth to exchange it. And in general, it is quite a good thing to exchange your opponent's most active pieces. So that was one plan. There is also move somewhere knight b5 hanging in the air. Again, targeting the squares, attacking the queen, defending the c3 pawn straight away. So that could have been a move. Even king h1 was suggested by the engine, rook e1 as well. Move that is played in the game, queen e2, also seems to be a very, very normal move, but I feel it was critical moment as well, because this move is not the most aggressive, especially in terms of allowing black to do kind of go forward with their game very comfortably. And also we see that Gukesh spent a huge amount of time to play this move. A huge amount of time, almost half of his time spent just to play this queen e2 move. And we see that from this point on, black actually overtakes the initiative. And now this very cool sequence was played, very powerful. Again, no castling for black, but captures, and knight b2. I was telling you before that pushing that I pawn is very, very smart, very tricky, and that b2 square is actually, funny enough, it doesn't happen too often, that this would have been an outpost for the piece, but it happens now. We are opening the c file. We can target now this backward pawn on c3. We have heavy pieces ready from the black side, and also those squares that our pieces can use to jump. And white doesn't have such an obvious, clear plan. So queen e3 was played, rook c8, targeting the pawn immediately. Rook c1 is maybe a little bit soft, let's say, because yeah, now black's pieces are just going in, and queen c4 is a very strong move. Now f5, perhaps it's an inaccuracy, maybe even a mistake, because again this allows black to use those white squares. Maybe what was necessary is like some rook e1 move. Maybe bishop can come here. If we have a weakness, just let's maneuver those pieces around, try to cover those squares. So if we see that we have some like holes on c4 d3, maybe bishop on f1 could help. f5 was for sure, you know, I tried to get very nice activity, something along the f file. Queen d3, very strong move played. And now perhaps another critical mistake by Gukesh, queen e1. Yeah, what can we say? This is quite a passive approach. And so now, after this move is played, Ding is getting this beautiful possibility of bishop g5. So if we see what happens after bishop g5, perhaps queen f4 is better because of it, not allowing the bishop to g5. Then pawn to g5 is possible. A very nice idea. And apparently, in the previous games played between Gukesh and Ding, Ding played with black pieces, and he did go for move g5. And it allowed him to win the games. So maybe there was some you know, tough feelings connected with this g5 move, and Gukesh didn't want to allow it so easily. After g5, still coming here to this position, probably queen g3, and it is still not so horrible. Yes, black is doing fine, but it is better compared to what happened in the game. Because in the game, bishop comes to g5, and black is getting huge activity. Rook c2 and rook c4. And yeah, now if you see at the clock, if you haven't noticed still, then if you now look at the clock, look at this change. Now Ding is suddenly up on time, and also the position is just super active for him. h4 tried by Gukesh, but bishop comes to f4. Bishop doesn't need to retreat, it goes forward and attacking the pawn on e5. But the pawn is for now defended, but the more things are attacked, something should collapse eventually. And it happens because after queen b1, played by Gukesh, first pawn is dropped, Ding took on c3, and now after capture, we have quite a critical moment as well, because probably the most precise move was actually taken here with the bishop, but he captures with the pawn. That allows white some activity along the f-file. King is still in the center. It doesn't feel like a big deal, but the more open files there are in the position, well, the more, some entry points that white could actually get this compensation for the pawn. And this was actually the moment where it was possible. Knight e2 was played, queen e5, another pawn, second one, knight f4 captures queen f4, and here perhaps a decisive mistake. So this was the position. Now both players quite, having time trouble. Just to remind you, there is no increment here in the World Championship match. There is no increment. So we see 10 minutes for Gukesh, 16 minutes, 17 minutes for Ding, and this is move 29. So they need to get till move 40 to have additional time. So this is very little, as we know. So now, of course, the time pressure is huge. There's already also, quite a lot of general stress because there was some tension, ups and downs, especially for Gukesh. He probably liked his position at the beginning. He was confident in the early opening, middle game, but then things start to go not really his way. So it's a tricky moment, but that was still his chance. He went for queen c2 move, but another very strong move was bishop to c5, and that was probably the strongest. Just cut off this king, and here queen g4 would have been the move. And this is such a cool position because it turns out that white has a move, queen h7, which in the post-game conference we have heard that both players saw this move. They have seen it. The idea, of course, behind this move is that black cannot capture because rook f8 is a checkmate. It's such a brilliant idea. And it turns out that despite the fact that white has checkmating net, let's call it, rook is hanging on h8, it turns out that it's not enough because black has a brilliant, absolutely brilliant answer to this, queen to d4. And now white probably has to take, and now black also would be able to capture the queen. There is not no more checkmate on f8. There is no bishop on on c5, so it's not guarding the rook, and black has a winning endgame. So very brilliant sacrifice, but also great defense, and both players saw it. And this is why Gukesh didn't go for this move, bishop c5. Because he saw that queen h7 is not working. But it turns out that there was another move working here. And yeah, maybe since bishop c5 just asks, for try of a checkmate on f8, maybe he just didn't consider other candidate moves here. It could be sometimes we are considering some moves kind of like in a package with another follow-up move. But it is a good thing to try to look for candidates, because actually here the brilliant move here, rook f3, maybe even some other options as well, except queen h7, attack the pawn on a3. That is the idea behind this move. And this bishop on c5 still keeping the rook on h8. The castle is not possible, so thanks to that, white is actually having some chances of survival. So that was very important moment to try to find it. Of course, it's easy to say, especially when we see the engine. So it was very, very difficult moment, of course, for him. And he went for queen c2. Unfortunately, this is not enough for white. And now Ding I feel like plays super precisely till the rest of the game. Yeah, Queen C2 is just not enough. Just teeny bit is missing for white to get enough of the compensation. So let's see the game till the end now. Queen C4, very nice. Move Queen D2, and now finally on move 31 we have castling for black. Bishop d4 was played, and that seems like a good try. Now that seems like a very nice attack of the dark squares. Maybe there's going to be some queen to g5, maybe rook f8, queen f4, ideas of, you know, checking. Maybe a rank will be weak, and for example, queen a2 most likely is losing due to those ideas, that takes, and queen f4. But black, of course, should not be greedy. Black already has enough material, and the Ding finds very strong move 93, exactly to prepare e5 and cover those dark squares, deal with the bishop. Queen e3 was played, and despite the fact that now two pieces control e5 square, we see e5 played after captures, e5 anyway, and the idea is that if white takes, we have queen g4 check, and this is beginning of the end. Bishop g2. Yeah, maybe bishop g3. This move was considered by Judith Polgar and Daniel Naroditsky as I was watching the broadcast. But bishop g2 answered, and here bishop f5 is really strong way to bring the bishop to the attack. Of course, white cannot allow this to happen, so trying to escape from the pin. But still bishop e4 is coming, and this is a very good way to play this out, because we are blocking the queen as well. There are some tricky checks for now, and we are ready to simplify. King h2, and another very nice practical move, h6, because now some moves like queen e8, which would have been possible if we just wanted to simplify the position immediately. For example, take on g2, then queen e8 is actually suddenly turn around. I can see it happening in my bullet game, completely possible. Luckily, we didn't have this blunder in the game, so h6 is a really nice practical move. Everything is defended, we just can make some place for the king. And bishop h3, logical, but then again, this is not enough. Queen d1 is coming, and black is ready to just seal the deal here. Bishop d6 played, and this was such a dramatic ending also, because I actually forgot to mention here how little time Gukesh had. So he had just a few seconds. This is still only move 39, so he played it on 4 seconds, and then bishop d6 was played on 1 second, as you see here, 31 seconds. 30 minutes added now after this move, so he barely managed it. It was so stressful when watching if he's even going to manage to make this move. And now he did, but it does not save the game. Queen c2, king g3, queen a2 played, and bishop e6. And now last precise move, king h8. And funny enough, this is also last move in the game. Why would king h7 not work? Well, now king is under the check, so queen e4 is coming with a check. So black, after capturing, loses a queen as well. So that would not be the scenario that would be the best for Ding. But he finds king h8, and the difference is that if now queen takes, well, black doesn't have to take, of course. So black doesn't take, but includes just queen f2 check and takes the queen in the next move. So that wins. Well, Gukesh, he didn't go for it. He didn't want to try this. So he simply, after king h8, he resigned, because there are no moves basically. King g2 is a big threat. The pawn is queening, or the checkmate is gonna be soon. So Gukesh resigned, and that was a huge moment, maybe potentially historical moment, because first round won by Ding, and this is first win for him in over 300 days. We are all following his tough games throughout this year. he wasn't doing great on the board. So for sure, this was a very, very important moment for him. Hopefully, we'll see Gukesh bounce back. Hopefully, we're going to see more excitement. But this first game, I think, promises just that. I think this is a great start for us. I think this is really good news for all the chess fans around the world. Ding is back. Ding is back, as Gukesh said in the conference, that he wasn't expecting anything less than to see his opponent in the best version of himself. And that is great to see. The game was really exciting. So just to see some key points, again, I think what is really cool that we have such moves like g4, you know? We have this a-pawn march. Seeing later the knight jumping all the way to b2. This is actually such a brilliant outpost. Then Ding waiting with castling. And I always love to mention it that castling doesn't always mean that you bring your king to the safety, because if you castle, sure, usually it's gonna be a good thing. But on the other hand, you also show your opponent where your king is gonna be. So if they have some hopes of an attack or chances of an attack, you already show them where your king is gonna be. And this can be very useful for them to prepare the plan. But if you don't do it, if you wait it out, then they don't know. So it's harder for them to prepare the plan or the attack, or like in this case, I mean, a pawn storm. So this was really, really tricky, but he did it in a way that everything is under his control. There was no big risk for him or his king. His king safely castled on move 31, and that was already winning for him. But also he had these brilliant possibilities of this queen sacrifice over here. Queen h7 was so beautiful. But even perhaps more beautiful refutation possible after queen to d4. Both players saw it. This is why we have not seen it on the board. But this is the case when we have two such strong players facing one another. A lot of beautiful variations that are possible. We don't really see them on the board because they see not only the beautiful variation, but also the refutation. But luckily, we can later take a look and explore those hidden gems on our own. So I think great game. As I said, I am excited. I will repeat it again. I hope you guys also, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the match. I hope you follow along both the match and my recaps. I think below me here you have my Twitch as well as Instagram. If you want to follow me there, hang out with my community on Twitch. I stream almost daily, so hope to see you then as well in the chat. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see more, what we could improve. This is just my first video, a proper one on YouTube, so for sure I will also have a lot to learn along the way. So thank you so much for watching. Take care. Have a lovely, lovely, lovely rest of the day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.